Prom was 2 months away and I was getting ready to ask Tracy to be my prom date. I know some guys asked for their girlfriends as early as 3 months before the date, but I didn't need that because Tracy was my girl. Always was my girl. And prom was a done deal. Hell, graduation was a done deal since I was 5 years old. Tracy Batson and I have been neighbors since her family moved in next to mine when I was 5 and she was 4. We met a few days after the family moved. I was playing alone in the backyard when I noticed someone running towards me. I got up in time when she reached me, a short-haired blonde girl with green eyes and freckles all over her face. She reached out to me and hugged me tightly. I let her do it. When we uncoupled, she knelt down next to me and started playing with my Tonka trucks. That was all. No fanfare. Best friends forever. Tracy and I didn't play together every day. Sometimes she'd go off to play with the girls, sometimes I'd go off to play with the boys, but most of the time, we'd play with Tracy, me and the others when they showed up. I understood perfectly well that she was a girl, but for some reason, I never looked at her the same way as at other girls. Sometimes other girls had lice. I don't know why, but Tracy didn't have that. We remained best friends through elementary, middle, and high school. While other boys and girls were starting to pair off, Tracy and I were already a couple. Other couples would go on dates, but Tracy and I would just do things together. This wasn't a date. We just did what we've always done. I was 14, and she was 13, when we kissed for the first time, and like everything else for us, it was done easily and without fanfare. We were leaving the evening cinema. I put my arm around her waist, she clung to me, and we kissed. It wasn't anything special for the two of us, although I knew we both felt something electric. After that, we kissed many more times. Our parents seemed to take everything for granted. I was part of her family, and she was part of mine. I could count on being yelled at or spanked if I misbehaved in her house, and so did she, if she misbehaved in mine. Our friends also took our relationship in stride, perhaps because it seemed like we were always together. In the area, it was clear that we were together, and no one tried to come between us. Outside the area, things were different, and Tracy had guys running after her. She was developed in all the right places, and although I was always worried that she would find someone she wanted more than me, I never worried too much because we were we. She was mine, and I was hers. End of story. At least that's what I thought. As always, after class ended, Tracy met me in my car in the parking lot. As we were driving home, I looked to the side and asked where she wanted to go after graduation. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. 15. This was not good. I pulled over to the side of the road as soon as I could find a free space. When I pulled over, I put the car in park and turned my full attention to Tracy, who had started crying and looked like she had just eaten a bag of lemons. I already told Justin Morrow that I was going to prom with him, Stevie, Tracy stammered. For a second, I lost my breath. I shook my head in disbelief. Then he looked straight into Tracy's eyes. He invited me last month. I thought it would be cool to go with someone else. You know, different guy, different perspective. You know, there's always me and you. What's the big deal? Ah, rug, ha! I thought my head was going to explode. What's going on, Tracy? Another perspective? You're kidding me. She burst into tears. I started to reach out to her to console her, but then common sense hit me over the head. We are we, Tracy. We are we, I shouted. You are my girlfriend. My girlfriend won't go to prom with another guy just for a different perspective. Look, Stevie, I've never dated another guy, and you've never dated another girl. You know you're leaving for college in a few months, and we'll both have to date other people. At least, Tracy, why didn't you wait until I left? That would be kind-hearted at the very least. Tracy mumbled something, sobbing. I wasn't even listening, turning on the program and driving us home. At home, I grumbled for 4 days. I didn't go to Tracy's house, and she didn't come to me. Both parents were not born yesterday. I found out from Joyce that Tracy will be going to the ball with Justin Morrow. Joyce cried as she told me this, Stevie. Would you like to add anything? Mom asked at dinner on the 4th day. Dad raised both eyebrows. My little sister Ellie fidgeted in her seat. Only that you and Joyce can stop making wedding plans for us. We're so sorry, Stevie. Really, it's a pity. You know, if you need to talk, Dad said. Anyone want 2 tickets to prom? I asked, trying to sound as if I was joking. Justin Morrow was more of an acquaintance than a friend. I had no idea if he knew Tracy and I were a couple, but it didn't matter. If Tracy was really mine, she would have told Justin about it instead of consenting. I moped around for a couple of weeks, and then, as I was getting out of the car after school one day, I heard Allison Warnock giggling about something with some of her friends. Allison was Laura Warnock's little sister who lived across the street from me and hung out with a mutual group of friends in the neighborhood. Laura has been my friend for about as long as Tracy has, and was probably Tracy's second best friend after me, at least until 3 weeks ago. Allison was a freshman at our high school, about 6'3", rail thin, with blonde hair, and absolutely adorable. I've known Allison since she was 2, and we've always gotten along great. She was a little eccentric and reckless, and was often my partner when we had chicken fights on the lawn or in the pool, and she sat on my shoulders. She was so light that I could carry her with one hand, which gave me the opportunity to use a free hand to fight, giving our team a clear advantage. Anyway, up until this point, I'd never thought of Allison as anything more than just a skinny, flat-chested sister. But I admit, I've always had a special place for my chicken wrestling partner. Hell, I already had tickets, so I made a somewhat awkward request. I called her away from the twins, another pair of 15-year-olds in our area, and simply asked her to be my date. Her alabaster face turned bright pink, and she lowered her ears to the ground. I knew I had taken her by surprise. Shouldn't you ask my sister if you're not going with Tracy? You have always been one of her closest friends, she said, looking up at my face at the last second. No, I have to ask the girl Warnock who I really want to go with, and that's you, even if there's no chicken fighting at the prom. I'm not asking you to be Tracy's replacement. I'm asking you to be my friend. Can I ask Mom and Dad first? I'd like to go, but until I'm 16, Dad says I have to ask permission. Oh yeah, I don't want Big Ed to be mad at me, I replied. Allison's father, Big Ed, was a 5-foot 100-pound bear, and no sane person would want him to be mad at him. But as much as I feared Big Ed, I knew that the real strength in the family was Allison's mother, Barbara, who was every bit the Irish Catholic everyone had read about in the legends. God forbid the boy to touch even one of his daughters. Barbara would probably tear off both his ears and scratch out both his eyes. In the evening, the phone rang, but not to me. Barb called directly to the boss. My mother and I heard my mother assure Barb in great detail that I would be a complete gentleman. When my mother gives her word, everything happens that way, which suited me quite well. The next morning, I didn't even have time to get to my locker when Laura was already in front of me and cursing, "What the hell, Stevie? Am I chopped liver? We've been friends forever, spend half the time together, and you ask my little sister to prom? What's happened?" Laura practically screamed at me. I raised my hands in surrender. Until a few weeks ago, I was sure that I was going to prom with Tracy, but apparently I was mistaken, I said. After she, figuratively speaking, gave me a turnaround. A turn I had no intention of going at all. Then I finally decided that I would go, but only to have fun, without any attachment. Allison makes me laugh and I want to laugh. We'll go and have some fun, and then I'll finish school and go study. Laura let out a small scream, and then inhaled about half of the oxygen in the hallway while everyone watched us. She stared at me, and then snorted. I looked at everyone who was looking at me, shrugged, and went to my first lesson of the day. I think I've lost 2 friends. Graduation was as good as I could have hoped for. Allison looked stunning in her navy blue dress with her hair styled and her makeup on for the first time. I never had the urge to throw her over my shoulders for a chicken fight, but I definitely did have the urge to pull her close to me for a slow dance, which is what I did. Already at the second dance, she clung to my body, and so we danced until the end of the evening. Yes, I saw Tracy and Justin from a distance several times throughout the evening. Yes, she looked great in a rather body-hugging green dress, and to be fair, Justin looked pretty sharp in a black suit. When I saw them, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. The truth is, I didn't try to pay attention to Tracy and Justin because I really enjoyed spending time with Allison. She was fun and funny and sexy in her skinny chick kind of way. Several times I thought that in the next year or so, she would turn into a real heartbreaker. I almost wished I could stay here to see this prediction come true. We went to a very brunch at a local IHOP with a few other couples. Then I drove us home. I parked in front of my house and walked her across the street to the porch. Then I plucked up my courage and kissed her goodnight, with a little bit of tongue before she hugged me tighter and ran her tongue over mine. After that, we did it a second time until I heard a stir outside the Warnock's door and decided I should take the hint and walk home. The following Saturday morning after prom, Tracy walked into my house, as she had done for years until 2 months ago. Mom and I looked at each other in surprise as Tracy walked over to the couch in the family room and moved closer to me. She sat silently for about a minute while we watched Premier League football and then whispered in my ear that we should talk on the back patio. I protested, but caught the look on Mom's face and knew I had to follow Tracy outside. "Don't you think this has been going on long enough, Stevie? It's been a week since graduation ended and you still haven't talked to me? As I already told you, it was a one-time thing. I dated someone else, and so did you, although I must say, you surprised me with your choice. You definitely didn't make Laura happy." "I wasn't trying to make Laura happy. I was trying to make myself happy," I grumbled. "Okay, you've made yourself happy, I think, but now it's time to get back to normal life. I'm back, I'm yours, and you're mine. At least until the next time you decide to take a break from me," I interrupted. Tracy looked confused. "I can't say I didn't like prom, but I'm done with it." "We're back to being ourselves, Stevie," she said. "No, Tracy, we will never be us again," I said. "You're done with us forever." "Don't be like that, Stevie," Tracy replied, holding back tears. I got up from the chair, went into the house, took the car keys, and drove away. An hour later, after Tracy gave up and went home, my mom texted me. "I met with Allison several times over the summer before I left for college. We always had fun, but we were both realistic. I had 4 years of college ahead of me, and she had 3 years of high school. We agreed that it was best for us to go our separate ways, although we didn't rule out casual dates in the summer when I was home. A little after New Year's, Tracy called me from school. It was her senior year and prom. She called to let me know that she was making amends for ruining my prom and that I could ask her to prom this year. "This is a generous offer," I told her, "but I'm just not ready for it." I suggested that Justin might be available. Since they had a good time last year, maybe they should do it again. She quietly hung up. In the summer, when I was at home, Tracy sometimes came to me and made pitches that we should get back together. She even hinted to both my parents that she and I should get back together. It also explains why I had to endure an hour-long lecture from her mother about how good we were together and how I shouldn't see the forest for the trees. Of course, because of the whole story with Tracy's mom, I was polite, but I still couldn't give her an answer that would make her happy. For his part, Tracy's father couldn't look me in the eye. I think he agreed with my position but did not want to say it out loud. I knew Allison had had her share of dates after all. She was turning into a true, stunning beauty when she finally got in shape and had small but perky breasts. I went on dates too because I'm a pretty decent guy with a healthy sex drive. I kept track of Allison enough to know that halfway through her senior year she didn't have a steady boyfriend, so while I was home for Christmas, I asked her if she wanted me to go to prom with her. She smiled widely and said, "Yes. 3 years has matured Allison's body and mind, but even though she's grown into a real hot babe, she's never let her beauty overshadow her fun-loving personality. We had a great time at prom, and an even better time afterwards when we first got to know each other better." Hoping for this outcome, I booked a hotel room, but I wasn't going to push Allison into it. We started the evening as great friends, and just like 3 years ago, Allison pressed her body against mine every time we hit the dance floor. Her lips tasted amazing, and we spent a lot of time kissing. Towards the end of the evening, I asked if she wanted to have some more fun with her friends or if she wanted to go to the hotel with me. She didn't seem surprised or upset that I'd booked a room for us. In my room, I had a bottle of champagne and a container of strawberries. We took our time in bed, kissed, joked, laughed, and talked. I don't know how long we did this until we found ourselves in front of the bed, where I carefully began to remove her burgundy silk and lace dress. As I slowly stripped her down to her burgundy bra and panties, she looked nothing like the skinny tomboy I remember it as a 12-year-old. We both stripped my clothes down to my panties before I turned my attention back to her. I slowly began to explore and caress her body. Since Allison was a normal child, I assumed she wasn't a virgin, but I didn't think she had much experience with sex, and it only took a few minutes for me to be convinced I was right. Covering her entire body with kisses and bringing her to climax 3 times with his caresses. But I didn't stop continued work on Allison, bringing it even to 6 climaxes before slowly creeping up her body. We started out slow and gentle, kissing as we went, and then gradually picked up speed. After about 10 minutes, she started making inarticulate sounds again, and had one final orgasm. After another 10 minutes, I came like a freight train and kissed her afterwards. We started out slow and gentle, kissing as we went, and then gradually picked up speed. After about 10 minutes, she began making inarticulate sounds again and experienced her final climax. After another 10 minutes, I also came to the finish line and kissed her after that. We snuggled quietly together for a while before we started talking and laughing again. We got dressed and left, and I got Allison home by 1:45 a.m., 15 minutes ahead of Big Ed's appointment for the night. Allison and I were together for the summer after she graduated, but we went our separate ways again when she left for her junior year of college in Iowa, and I left for my senior year of college in Indiana. We emailed occasionally, and although we remained great friends, we both knew we were moving in different directions. I was graduating from college in May, and she had 3 more years of school ahead of her. They say timing is everything, and it seems like our timing just wasn't right. I had to give Tracy credit for her persistence. She kept her finger on the pulse of the game, sending periodic emails gently reminding me that she would drop everything in an instant if I so much as said the word. I politely reminded her that our ship separated at night, and we both had our own lives. I got a good job at a mid-sized accounting firm in Ohio and started studying for a master's degree, thinking I would someday want to be a college professor. I know it sounds nerdy, but I really enjoyed connecting with people through math. While taking college classes, I interacted with many female students, and my social life was more in that direction than in any other, until Molly came into my world and pulled me out of my meager existence. Molly was a divorced woman with a child who had recently started working in the audit department at my firm, with long, bright orange hair, freckles everywhere, and skin whiter than white. She also had large breasts and captivating green eyes, which I did not notice until one day during a birthday party in the office break room when she spilled hot coffee on my shirt. Everyone knows what I'm talking about, coffee and cake for a colleague in the break room. Apparently, she had taken her cake a little before me, but as she turned to walk away from the table, the square of cake she had just taken flew off her plate, and in an attempt to stop it, she jerked her left hand to the side, creating a splatter that hit on my chest. It hurt like hell. That's what I remember. But when I raised my head, I got lost in those green eyes, and suddenly I couldn't feel the pain anymore. It wasn't until another employee rushed towards me with paper towels and started dabbing that I felt the touch again and cried out in pain. Molly immediately began to apologize, and I went to the toilet. An hour later, those mesmerizing green eyes showed up in my office with another piece of cake, and 5 minutes later I had a date for the following Friday evening. I have to admit, I was shocked when I rang Molly's doorbell on Friday night, and it was answered by a teenager with red hair. He had to be at least 16 years old, which meant Molly was probably older than I thought. It's not that her age put me off, but I was surprised when she admitted that she was 42. She later said that she had been married for 16 years and divorced for 4 years. She looked gorgeous in what I would call mom's version of the infamous little black dress, as it came a couple of inches above her knees, and showed just a hint of her large breasts. I tried not to be too conspicuous because I knew her son was watching me. Perhaps because Molly was raising a teenager, she seemed, despite her age, to be very well versed in the world of youth. It took me about 5 minutes to come to terms with it all, but after that, it felt just like every other date I'd ever been on. We enjoyed a delicious meal and then went to a concert organized by the local Philharmonic. Not the wildest date I've ever been on, but good enough that I knew I wanted to try again. Maybe it had something to do with her age, but I was a little shy about making a sexual move towards Molly. She was, of course, quite sexy, but something about her scared me, to say the least. However, she clearly noticed that something was wrong, and on our 6th date, she broached the subject. We had a bourbon and barbecue night and then went to a country western dance club for some dancing. Neither of us had ever danced before, but we had a great time learning from the veterans at the club. I held on to Molly all night and knew she was picking up on the vibrations of the night. But I was again wondering how I should start when Molly put her hands behind my head and pulled me in for a heated kiss. Her body was pressed against mine, and I know she felt my arousal growing. "I know you're worried about my age, Stevie, but I'm not going to break the buzz. We must end this night horizontally," Molly whispered. An embarrassed smile spread across my face from ear to ear. I took her hand and led her out of the club. 10 minutes after we got to my apartment, I began to caress and please her. Molly may have been the oldest woman I've ever slept with, but she was incredibly energetic and knew how to use her experience. "Ah, fuck, Stevie! Ah!" she screamed during her first climax. Thus, I gave her several climaxes, and then we tried more than one position throughout the evening and night, and every time it was amazing. About a year later, a wedding invitation came in the mail and brought me to a screeching halt. It turned out that Allison had graduated from college about a year earlier and was getting married to the man she had dated in her senior year. We stopped texting and I lost track of her. She now lived in Illinois, but the wedding was to take place in New York, where her parents still lived. I took Molly with me and explained how everyone fit into this neighborhood celebration, because that's exactly what it really was. My parents were there, Big Ed, Barb, and Laura, Tracy and her parents. Drew Goldstein seemed like a nice enough guy, but it took a lot of internal reflection for me to be happy for Allison. I never got over my feelings for her, but it just wasn't meant to be. Shit happens. You have to move on with your life. However, I probably didn't make either Allison or Drew happy when she first introduced him to me a couple days before the wedding. We had such a history, and I was probably as close to the older brother as she was to accept me as one. "I'm very happy for you, Drew, but listen to me, and listen carefully," I said sharply, keeping a smile on my face. "If you hurt her, I'll break your nose. Understood?" Both Allison and Drew seemed slightly taken aback by my statement. Drew was smart enough to nod in understanding as I shook his hand. Laura later said that Big Ed approved of my threat. Tracy had apparently finally forgotten about me. She showed up with her husband in tow and a pregnant belly. He looked like he was straight out of a 60s biker movie, and neither Joyce nor Tim Batson looked very pleased. Tracy and I didn't talk much all weekend, but when we did, we were polite. Molly and I never sought exclusivity, and I knew she was seeing others while I chose not to. We never discussed the others until a few months after Allison's wedding, when Molly cooked a sumptuous Irish dinner and told me she had news for me. It turned out that she had been dating a nice guy, a couple of years older than herself. For most of the time she had been dating me, and he started talking about exclusivity. She decided that she should tell me this information. I wasn't entirely surprised by the statement, and certainly couldn't blame her if she wanted to pursue a more secure relationship. Besides, the two of them probably had more in common. She began to show emotions and, it seems, even apologized, but I gently stopped her. "Don't ever apologize for doing what's right for you, baby," I said. "You have always been completely frank and honest with me. If you want commitments, and he can give them, but I can't, then that's on my conscience. You are a beautiful woman and a beautiful soul. I hope everything works out great for the two of you." I really meant what I said. I got up from the table, kissed her very tenderly on the cheek, and left. In a conversation about 5 years later, my mother broke the somewhat sad news of Allison's divorce. I say somewhat sad because, truth be told, I still had some feelings for this woman, but the truth is, it's always sad when someone's marriage goes down the drain. From my point of view, you marry a person thinking it will be a lifelong commitment, and when it turns out not to be, it's devastating. I felt sorry for her, but I didn't try to contact her because we weren't in touch. I was more than surprised when I received a message from Allison 6 months later. It read, "Are you still there?" I guessed she wasn't sure I still had the same phone number. I was very surprised to see who the message was from, but I didn't respond to it for about 3 days. In the end, I answered with no meaning. Yes, 3 more days passed before I received a call one evening. "Do you have a few minutes for an old friend?" she asked. "I really need to spend some time with a non-relative or friend who is trying to cheer me up. I know we haven't interacted much over the years, but you've always been honest with me and made me laugh. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a good laugh." Not being a beautiful woman, I didn't understand how difficult it was for Allison in the years following our separation. In college and after, she was always choosing a date. She was invited to all sorts of events and social outings, and it must have been exhausting. When she married Drew, the handsome son of a prominent Illinois financier, the good times seemed to last forever, as they both got good jobs with his father's company and enjoyed a very comfortable life in a new home in the Chicago suburbs. Things went south when she found out that Drew had been cheating on her for at least a year with the daughter of an old family friend. I agreed to go to Chicago for a long weekend to give her a shoulder to lean on. I know she sounded upset on the phone, but I was shocked when she showed up at the door of her apartment in a bad part of town. She looked like she hadn't eaten or showered in days, and her eyes seemed haunted. What happened to my little chicken wrestling buddy? She looked like crap. I'm sure my mouth dropped open, and then she started crying. Like most guys, I get completely lost in the presence of a crying woman. All I could do was hug Allison and walk her back to the apartment. We spent the next 2 hours on the shabby couch as she sobbed into my shirt and rambled about her grief. Having learned about the betrayal, Allison kicked Drew out of the house, but then Drew's father intervened in the matter. Allison didn't read the prenuptial agreement she signed with Drew, and 9 months later Allison was divorced and living in that apartment, with no job and almost no life. Drew's father made sure his HR department ruined Allison's chances of getting a good job in the area, and she worked at a dry cleaner. Allison and I talked a lot Friday night and all day Saturday. As soon as I arrived at her apartment, we hugged, but after that, the most physical thing we did was occasionally hold hands while talking. Everything was somehow wrong. I also felt bad seeing Allison so broken and how her life was going. I needed to give her a clean outlet, so I turned to the only man I knew who cared more about Allison than I did. I explained the situation to Big Ed as I understood it, and he promised that he and Barb would be in Chicago the next morning to take Allison home to upstate New York. When I told Allison the news, she almost tore my ears off, but I knew it was the right move. As I helped her pack her meager belongings, she still called me every name I knew. "I am a 30-year-old woman. I don't need to be treated like a 5-year-old girl, you idiot." This was one of the nicest words she said to me while I was helping her pack her things on Monday. I kept in touch with Allison weekly through Big Ed and Barb. Allison stubbornly refused to talk to me. My life went on. I dated several women, including one for almost a year. I was already close to asking her an important question when she told me that she had met someone she wanted to date and did not want to cheat on me, so we needed to break up. I told her I appreciated her honesty and returned my deposit for the engagement ring I had purchased. About 6 months after sending Allison back to New York, I took a couple days off and went to Chicago for the weekend. Did some homework and waited outside Drew Goldstein's Mercedes when he got off work on Friday at 5 o'clock. When I approached him in the parking lot, he didn't seem to remember me right away. But as soon as I took my place, I saw a spark of recognition flash in his eyes. But he didn't have time to raise his arms, and I attacked him with all the strength that was in my body of 83 meters and 82 kilograms. I felt his nose explode as he hit the ground. I warned you what would happen if you hurt Allison. Apparently you forgot. But I don't, I said quietly. Interestingly, although there were many people in the parking lot who saw me hitting Drew, no one made a move to help him or stop me from leaving. I guess the boss's son just wasn't popular. I was back in Indiana just a few hours later, still expecting the police to show up at my door because of my attack on Drew, and was surprised when that didn't happen. I was also surprised 2 weeks later when Allison called me. The bird on my tail told me that a couple of weeks ago you trimmed Drew's nose, Allison said. I thought you were just being a jerk by threatening him all these years. Now I don't know how to thank you. By the way, Dad said he would send you a bottle of Glenmorangie aged 18 years. I had another idea for how Allison could thank me, and I took a week off to help her do it. We spent most of that week together, and by the time I left to return to Indiana, we had become a long-distance, monogamous couple. We lived long distance for about 6 months, after which she came to live with me in Indiana. Big Ed and Barb weren't entirely on board with these terms, but given our history, they cut us some slack. However, this only lasted about a year, as within 2 months, Allison accepted my marriage proposal, and 10 months after that, we got married. I love irony. So, we got married exactly 17 years after our first date, my graduation. It may have taken us a long time to be together, but as they say, good things are worth waiting for. Allison and I just celebrated our 30th anniversary at a party thrown by our children, Eddie and Rosalie, and their spouses. It wasn't always perfect, but it was as close as I probably deserved. By the way, we get a Christmas card from Tracy every year. She has a 4th husband and 4 children. Although I didn't know it at the time, someone upstairs was keeping an eye on me. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.